What happens when you truly observe your mind? Buddhist wisdom. Try this right now. Pause and ask yourself, in the last 5 minutes, what was my mind thinking about? Most of us can't answer this question. Not because we have poor memory, but because we've never truly paid attention to our own mind. We check our phones dozens of times a day, yet we rarely check in with our mind. We scroll through countless updates about other people's lives, but we almost never pause to look at what's happening inside our own. The mind determines every emotion you feel, every decision you make, every moment of happiness or suffering you experience, yet it remains the thing you pay the least attention to. This is one of life's great paradoxes. We trust our mind to guide us through everything, but we've never really looked at how it actually works. 600 years ago, the Buddha discovered something remarkably simple, yet profound. He didn't arrive at this understanding through philosophy or mysticism. He discovered it through direct observation. He simply sat down and watched his mind. In the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, the discourse on the 4 foundations of mindfulness, he taught, "A mendicant understands mind with greed as mind with greed, and mind without greed as mind without greed." It sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? Just observe and know what's there. But here's what most people miss. This isn't about thinking about your mind. This isn't about analyzing yourself or trying to figure yourself out. This is direct seeing, direct knowing. It's the difference between reading a menu and tasting the food. And when you actually begin to do this, not just read about it or intellectually understand it, but actually practice observing your mind in real time, something fundamental begins to shift. Today, I'm not going to talk about becoming enlightened or reaching some distant spiritual goal. What I want to share with you is far more immediate and practical. What actually changes in your daily life when you start observing your mind, you'll find yourself less controlled by your emotions. You'll begin to understand why you keep repeating the same patterns and mistakes. And most importantly, you'll start to taste what genuine freedom feels like. Not freedom as an idea, but as a lived reality. Think about the last time you got angry. Someone said something that hit a nerve, and what happened? Heat surged in your chest. Your heart started racing. And before you knew it, words were coming out of your mouth. Sharp words. Words you would later regret. The whole thing happened in 3 seconds. And then hours later, you're sitting there thinking, why did I say that? This is how most of us live. Something happens, and immediately, automatically, we react. There's no space between what happens and how we respond. It's pure reflex. You don't choose to get angry. You just are angry. You don't decide to say those words. They just come out. But something remarkable happens when you start observing your mind. At first, nothing seems to change. You'll still react the same way, instantly, automatically. But then, maybe days or weeks into the practice, you'll catch something. You'll notice, oh, there's anger arising. Not, I am angry, but there is anger. And in that simple recognition, in that shift of language, a small gap appears. A pause. That gap might only be 2 or 3 seconds, but in those few seconds, everything changes. Because now, for the first time, you have a choice. Before, it was completely automatic. They say something. You react, you regret it later. But now, they say something. You notice something rising inside you. There's a pause, and then you choose how to respond. You're no longer a prisoner of your own reactions. This isn't about controlling your emotions or suppressing them. This is simply about seeing them. And when you see something clearly, it loses its power to control you. Not because you're fighting it, but because you're no longer unconscious of it. You're no longer identified with it. Let me be honest. This doesn't happen after one day. At first, you'll still react 99% of the time, just like you always have. But maybe 1% of the time, you'll catch it, even if it's after the fact. Even if you only notice it 5 minutes later, you'll see it. And that seeing is the beginning. Then maybe 2%, then 5%. It's gradual, but it's real. The Buddha was clear about what this requires. He used 3 words: atapi, sampajano, satima. Ardent effort, clear comprehension, continuous mindfulness. This isn't passive. This takes real engagement, real persistence. But it's not the effort of force or struggle. It's the effort of continuous, patient attention. Like learning to play an instrument. It takes practice. But the practice itself shouldn't be strained. What we're talking about is progress, seeing a little more clearly each day. And gradually, almost imperceptibly at first, your relationship to your mind transforms. You're no longer completely at its mercy. You begin to have space, genuine freedom, real choice in how you respond to life. This is where everything begins. You've probably noticed you get angry in the same situations, with the same people, over and over again. You know this pattern. You've promised yourself countless times, next time will be different, but next time comes, and it's the same thing all over again. Why does this happen? Most approaches try to change the behavior directly. Count to 10. Take a deep breath. Maybe these help a little, but they don't address the root of the problem. When you truly observe your mind, you start to see the chain. You see how one thing leads to another in a precise, mechanical sequence. It's actually quite predictable once you see it clearly. Someone says something. Your ears hear the words. That's contact. Immediately a feeling arises. The Buddha called this Vedana, and this is crucial. The feeling is unpleasant. This happens so fast, maybe a fraction of a second, that most people never notice it. They jump directly from hearing the words to being angry, completely missing what happened in between. But watch closely. The moment that unpleasant feeling arises, something else happens. Craving. Tanha. There's a wanting for this uncomfortable feeling to go away. There's resistance to it. And simultaneously, the mind starts interpreting. It creates a story. They're insulting me. They're disrespecting me. They think they're better than me. Notice something important here. These are interpretations, not facts. The fact is, just words being spoken. Everything else, the insult, the disrespect, the intention to hurt you, all of that is added by your mind. Then, based on this story, anger arises. Not from nowhere, but as a direct result of this chain. And finally, action follows. The Buddha called this paticca-samuppada, dependent origination. When this exists, that comes to be. When these conditions are present, this result follows. Always. It's as reliable as a law of nature. Once you see this chain clearly, you realize something profound. Anger isn't random or inevitable. It has conditions. And when you can see the conditions, you can work with them. You can intervene earlier at the level of feeling, at the level of interpretation, before the whole chain unfolds. But there's something even deeper here. As you continue observing, you'll notice it's not the event itself that makes you suffer. It's the story your mind talks about the event. It's not what happens that causes the suffering. It's what you think about what happens. The actual event, the words being spoken. That's the first arrow. It happens. It's unpleasant. But then your mind shoots a second arrow. They're trying to hurt me. They don't respect me. I need to defend myself. What's wrong with me that people treat me this way? This second arrow is always more painful than the first. The Buddha illustrated this precisely in the Salatha Sutta, the arrow discourse. When touched by a painful feeling, the uninstructed person experiences two feelings, one bodily and one mental, like being pierced by two arrows. The instructed person feels only the first arrow, not because they're enlightened or perfect, but because they've learned to see the difference between what actually happened and what their mind is making it mean. This is about seeing clearly the difference between reality and the story about reality. And when you see that distinction through direct observation, not through thinking about it, but through actually watching it happen in real time, you stop shooting the second arrow. Not because you're trying to stop, but because you see that you're doing it. And in that seeing, it naturally falls away. When anger arises, what do you normally say? I am angry. Think about those three words for a moment. The assumption is there is an I, and that I becomes the anger. Subject and emotion merged into one. But when you observe your mind closely, something strange happens. You begin to notice, oh, there is anger present. Not I am angry, but there is anger. Do you see the difference? This shift in language reflects a profound shift in perception. And this changes everything. When you say I am angry, there's complete identification, no space. You are the anger. You're trapped inside it. But when you observe there is anger present, suddenly there's space. You're no longer trapped. You're observing it. And that makes all the difference. This isn't dissociation. This isn't detachment in the sense of disconnecting from your experience. This is intimacy without identification. This is being fully present with the anger, feeling it completely, but not collapsing into it. When you observe anger this way, as a phenomenon arising rather than as your identity, you start to notice something remarkable. Anger is not a solid, stable thing. Watch it closely. This second, it's strong, intense. The next second, it's already different. Maybe it softens a little. Maybe it intensifies when you think about what they said. Then it softens again. What you thought was anger turns out to be more like a stream, a flow of micro-moments, each one arising and passing away. The Buddha taught, feeling is impermanent. What is impermanent is suffering. What is suffering is not self, not yours, not you, just a process unfolding. And when you see this impermanence directly, not as a concept you've read about, but through your own direct observation, something shifts. You stop being afraid of emotions. Because why fear something that's constantly changing? Something you know will pass. Most of the suffering around difficult emotions isn't the emotions themselves. It's the fear of them, the resistance to them. Before you start observing, when anger arises, oh no, I'm angry. This is bad. I need to get rid of this. And what happens when you fight an emotion? It gets stronger. But when you see clearly that anger is impermanent, that it will naturally pass on its own, something releases. You don't need to fight it. You can let it be there, knowing it will change. And this brings the most profound shift. You stop fighting with your own emotions. You stop this exhausting inner war. When you observe your mind, you discover something liberating. Emotions don't need to be managed or controlled. They need to be seen. And when they're met with awareness, when they're seen without judgment, without resistance, they transform naturally on their own. This doesn't mean you become emotionless. You still feel anger, sadness, anxiety, joy, but your relationship to these emotions fundamentally changes. They no longer overwhelm you. They no longer define who you are. They arise. You see them clearly. You don't identify with them. And they pass, like clouds moving through the sky. So, what actually changes when you practice observing your mind? Not in some distant future, but in your daily life right now. The first thing you notice is that fear begins to lose its grip. Not all fear. If a car is coming toward you, you still move. But the psychological fears, the ones that occupy your mind constantly, start to dissolve. Before observing, you're afraid of so many things. Afraid of what people think. Afraid of failure. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of not being enough. And underneath all these fears is one fundamental fear. The fear of losing control. The fear that things won't go the way you want them to. But when you observe your mind, you start to see something clearly. You never had control in the first place. You can't control what people think about you. You can't control whether things work out. You can't even control your own thoughts and emotions. They arise on their own. And seeing this, really seeing this through direct observation, something releases. It's not resignation. It's not giving up. It's something deeper. When you stop trying to control what can't be controlled, you discover a different kind of freedom. You can still act, still work toward things, still care. But you're no longer carrying this constant tension of trying to make reality conform to your preferences. And this changes how you respond to life. Before, when something unexpected happened, there was immediate resistance. This shouldn't be happening. This is wrong. This is unfair. And that resistance created suffering. But when you observe your mind, you start to catch this resistance as it arises. You see it. And in that seeing, you have a choice: to fight with reality or to respond to what's actually here. This doesn't mean you become passive. You still act when action is needed, but you're no longer acting from this place of inner conflict, this constant war between what is and what you think should be. You see clearly what's happening and you respond. Not from reaction, not from resistance, but from clarity. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to live more fully in the present moment. Before observing, your mind is almost never here. It's replaying the past. What you should have said, what went wrong, what you regret, or it's projecting into the future. What might happen, what you need to prepare for, what you're worried about. The present moment, the only moment you actually have, is missed entirely. But when you observe your mind, you start to see this clearly. You catch yourself lost in thought about the past or future. And in that catching, you return, not forcing yourself to be present, but simply noticing when you're not. And gradually, more and more of your life is actually lived. Not thought about, not worried about, but lived. This is the freedom the Buddha spoke about. Not freedom as an escape from life, but freedom within life. Not freedom from difficulty. Difficulties still come. But freedom from the extra suffering you add to difficulties through resistance, through fear, through trying to control what can't be controlled. You still feel pain when pain arises, but you're no longer adding that second arrow. You still face challenges, but you're no longer fighting with the fact that challenges exist. Life continues with all its ups and downs, but you're no longer at war with it. And there's something profoundly peaceful about this. Not the peace of having everything go your way, but the peace of being okay with things as they are, even while working to change what can be changed, the peace of not needing life to be different than it is in order to be at peace. The Buddha's final words were, "All conditioned things are subject to decay. Strive on with diligence. Everything changes. Everything passes." And in seeing this clearly, in accepting this deeply, there's freedom. So, the invitation is simple. Observe your mind. Not to reach some distant goal, not to become perfect, but to find freedom right here, in this moment, in this life as it actually is. Start today. Watch what's happening in your mind right now. And in that watching, discover what it means to truly live.